Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question asks if I can analyze the second presidential debate between Donald Trump and Joe Biden that was held on October 22, 2020 in Nashville, Tennessee. Another question here is, who won this debate? Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I'll put the link to Patreon in the description for this video. Coming into the second presidential debate, Joe Biden still had a lead in the polls, but it's estimated that 6 to 10% of voters were still undecided, meaning the debate could have some type of significant impact on the election. Considering what happened in 2016, it makes sense to be skeptical of the poll results, and I'm also skeptical that there are that many undecided voters. But either way, this is the last debate, and I think it was important for each candidate to leave a good impression with the voters. There were a number of topics that were discussed in this debate, including COVID, race, unemployment, healthcare, national security, and climate change. The tone of this debate was much different than what we saw in the first presidential debate. Coming into this debate, I saw Trump's greatest potential weakness as his demeanor and Biden's greatest potential weakness as how well he responded to attacks in the moment, like how well he did in that moment on stage, not the stuff he had planned in advance, but his responses. Neither candidate is outstanding in debates, in my opinion. They both have a fairly basic style, and they both lack the higher level skills, like explaining why one's position is better than their opponent's position. Each candidate often said their position was better, but again, they don't often explain why. They just say it is, which is really unsatisfying, especially to an undecided voter that doesn't have a strong feeling either way about a particular policy. They really want to hear why one policy is superior to another. So in making an analogy to something like a race between cars, they're both driving underpowered four-door sedans around a racetrack. It's almost like they took a lawnmower engine, like a Briggs & Stratton two-cycle, and put it in a Toyota Camry. Does that really qualify as racing? At least in this debate, the cars were actually moving forward around the track, so that's a big improvement over the last debate. Let's take a look at the strengths and weaknesses of the performances in this debate. So I'll look at Trump's strengths, then Biden's, and then I'll move to the weaknesses for both candidates. So starting with Trump's strengths. His demeanor was civil compared to how he performed in the first debate. A few times, he almost seemed polite as opposed to just expressing an absence of impoliteness, like when he expressed appreciation to the moderator. I think this helped him in a few ways, including allowing him to make his points in a way that could be understood. Instead of a bunch of short interruptions, he was able to offer a better explanation of his points. He got in a number of pretty good shots against Biden. For example, the all talk, no action statement. He mentioned how Biden has been in politics for 47 years and questioned if Biden actually accomplished anything in that time. We see Trump's argument that we need to beat the virus without destroying the country. And he also touched on the mental health consequences of the lockdown, which is an important topic that's often not discussed. He also talked about how there's no evidence of a collusion with Russia. $48 million was wasted in that investigation. He called it a phony witch hunt, as opposed, I guess, to a genuine witch hunt. He pointed out the incident with Joe Biden's son and whatever happened there with China with taking the money. He mentioned that term big man that appeared to refer to Biden. He compared Biden's health care plan to socialized medicine, and he painted Biden as wanting to destroy the oil industry. I think that might have been actually his best point during the debate. Now, moving over to the strengths of Joe Biden. Biden mentioned the New England Journal of Medicine. The editors of this journal have, for the first time ever, essentially endorsed a political candidate, in this case, Biden. They didn't say that explicitly, but is really the only takeaway after reading what they wrote. I think Biden should have actually pushed this point harder, as he is trying to take a pro-science position in this contest. I think it's worth noting that the scientists are only talking about the COVID response. So they're really trying to say that this is a one-issue election. COVID is the only thing people should base their vote on. I think they're really underestimating how important the economy and other issues are to many voters. Another good line from Biden related to COVID was the "people are learning to die with it" response, referring to Trump saying that people are learning to live with it. I also like this point about uniting the country. He made that a few times. The last strength of Biden, I think, is the fact that he stayed fairly steady throughout the debate. He avoided getting drawn into arguments that he would lose decisively. He didn't make any massive mistakes that opponents could really latch on to. Now moving to the weaknesses of Trump's performance in this debate. Trump should have counterattacked instead of getting bogged down when defending against Biden's remarks about COVID. We see that Trump again kind of stumbled over the tax return situation. This topic always comes up. I feel like he should be better prepared for this. He kept making statements referring to himself. Trump does better when he avoids words like I. I think he should have wrapped up his responses more quickly. He goes a sentence or two further than he should. Like he makes a good point, and instead of taking that, he keeps going when there's not much more to gain. In addition, that increases his chances of being interrupted by the moderator, which happened several times. Now moving to the weaknesses of Joe Biden. He talked about the use of plexiglass dividers. He walked right into the response of Trump, which of course was about the cost of plexiglass. It's like he's disconnected from how small businesses function. That would be really prohibitive for, like a restaurant, to put plexiglass dividers all throughout the establishment. Biden didn't vigorously defend the accusations about his son, Hunter Biden. He did offer a defense. It just wasn't particularly convincing. I think he should have been a little bit more assertive in this case, especially given the strategy he used later in the debate, this decency and character strategy. At one point, Biden pivoted away from questions about him and his family when he said, "It's not about us, it's about your family." Trump capitalized on the mistake using the typical politician line. This would be like if there was a criminal trial and a defendant got on the stand and said, "This isn't really about me committing a crime or not, it's about you and the jury." It just doesn't really resonate with people. We see that Biden failed to respond to the "who built the cages" question. Now, the moderator did seem to help him a bit here, but either way, he should have responded. Although I guess to be fair, his answer would not have helped him. It was the Obama administration that built the cages. He called the Proud Boys the poor boys. I don't think this was a big mistake, but it plays into the idea that he's not sharp, like at a cognitive level. And of course, we see the decency and character argument. I understand what Biden was trying to do here, but I always find it funny when career politicians try to make a race about decency. Biden tried to make the election about character during a debate where Trump did not appear to be aggressive. I think he should have called an audible in this case, said something different for his final statement. But again, I think his weakness is quick thinking in the moment, like I talked about before. So those are all the strengths and weaknesses, at least in my opinion, in this particular debate. Overall, I really liked this debate. There was a helpful dialogue presented in a somewhat rational manner, making a significant departure from the first debate. There was more differentiation in the positions as well. They really looked like distinct candidates who would bring something different to the presidency. So, who won this debate? I don't think either candidate's performance was great, but I don't think that either candidate made horrendous mistakes either. I think Biden did a little better in his initial responses to questions, but then lost in his exchanges with Trump. Biden doesn't seem quick on his feet. Now, this is a skill that's helpful during a debate, but doesn't necessarily have an impact on how one performs as president. I think Trump improved dramatically over his first debate and, of course, tended to win the exchanges. If somebody was looking at Trump and they liked his policy positions, but they did not like him as a person, for example, perhaps they would think he's narcissistic, his debate performance here gave people hope that he could change, or perhaps he's not as bad as they thought. He was able to pivot from someone quite unlikable in the first debate to someone who could be tolerated in the second. Overall, because debating is really about interacting, I would have to say Trump won by a small margin in the second debate. He didn't seem as well prepared, but he seemed to be able to think more quickly in the moment. His responses seem more natural. If the polls are correct, a slight victory in this debate will not be enough for Donald Trump, but as I said before, it's hard to know if the poll results are accurate. Like I talked about in my video about the first presidential debate, it is still sobering to think that one of these two candidates will actually win. But at least the level of civility has increased, which I think is a move in the right direction. Those are my thoughts on the second presidential debate. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comment section. They always generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis of this topic to be interesting. Thanks for watching.